Hello, I welcome you to another session of Daniel Hayford's lecture on the theme, an overview of the environment, ecological systems or ecosystems, and the field of ecology as we know it today. I feel privileged to help facilitate your learning at this stage of your life. I appreciate you in your capacity as a student, scientist, journalist, family member, citizen, and/or a nation builder of our world, among other things. To begin with, take note of the fact that the environment of a living organism can be broadly defined as its surroundings. Even though the interest of human beings naturally lies primarily in the environment of humans, human beings cannot afford to exist in isolation. They say that human activities are better understood when they are viewed in concert with other forms of life which exist in the animal, plant, fungal, and other kingdoms of life. That is to say that they say that the focus should be on all forms of life. I would like to inform you on authority that they are right. The environment is made up of 3 domains. These are 1. Gaseous or the air or the atmosphere. 2. Liquid or the water or the hydrosphere. And 3. Solid or the land or lithosphere. These 3 domains do meet at a common interface on the surface of the earth. That interface is a shallow life-bearing layer, and it is called the biosphere. Did you know the structure of the biosphere together with its functioning is basically dependent on the exchange of matter and energy which reportedly occurs continuously among the land surface, water bodies, and the atmosphere. The biosphere can be said to consist of a living system which is made up of the animal, plants, and other kingdoms, and non-living system or components or factors including minerals and water. The whole of the system under consideration is known to be sustained by the sun, which constitutes the primary source of energy. Living organisms of different species do interact with each other as well as with the physical environment they occupy. The total assemblage of the biotic and abiotic component of the environment, along with their interactions with each other, is called an ecological system, or simply ecosystem. The field of ecology is also titled bionomics, bioecology, or environmental biology by some authorities in the scientific community. The field of ecology refers to the scientific study of the interactions of living organisms with their environment. The term environment in this context refers to both living and non-living components or factors surrounding living organisms. Ecology can also be defined as the study of the interactions of living things with each other and with the physical environment. In this case, the term environment in the definition refers to non-living components or factors. The living component of the environment is called biotic environment, whereas the non-living component is called abiotic environment. Ladies and gentlemen, these definitions suggest that ecology is the scientific study of the environment, that is, the biotic and abiotic environment. The field of ecology helps us to gain knowledge and understanding of how living things live with each other in unique biotic or abiotic environments. I repeat, the field of ecology helps us to gain knowledge and understanding of how living things live with each other in unique biotic or abiotic environments. Ladies and gentlemen, the field of ecology is a sub-field or sub-discipline of the major field of science called biology, which is defined as the scientific study of living organisms. As a branch, subfield, or subdiscipline of biology, one can also define ecology as the scientific study of living organisms and the way such organisms interact with the environment around them. You can also afford to say that ecology is the branch of biology which studies the relationship between living organisms and their environment. Ladies and gentlemen, living organisms derive various benefits from their environment, be it their biotic environment or abiotic environment. One of the benefits which living things derive from their physical or biological environment is a place to live, that is their habitat. Thus, one can say that an ecologist explores the relationship between living things and their habitats. The field of ecology covers several levels of study, namely organism, population, community, ecosystem, biome, and the biosphere. Ecologists are biologists or scientists who study the relationships between living organisms and their environment. Ecologists learn about the natural world by studying multiple aspects of life, including the mosquito which breeds in stagnant water bodies in various communities in Africa and the human population on the continent. Indeed, an ecologist is characteristically interested in the way or manner in which the interactions between living things and their environment influence abundance, distribution, and life history strategies. In order to study the environment, ecologists ask certain pertinent questions. One of such questions is, how do living things interact with the living or biotic factors which surround them? Another question is, how do living organisms interact with the abiotic or non-living factors which surround them? Again, what do living organisms need to survive and thrive in their current biological and physical environments? In addition, what do living things need to survive and thrive in the ever-changing biological and physical environment? Yes, what do living things need to survive and thrive in the ever-changing biological and physical environment? Besides, why is it that ecology and evolutionary biology are related sciences? Why is it that ecology and evolutionary biology are related sciences? Ladies and gentlemen, ecologists find answers to these questions by observing, studying, and making reports on all forms of life and their ecosystems throughout the world. In other ways, ecologists study, examine, investigate how ecosystems function. Note that the word ecosystem is a short form of the term ecological system. That is, ecosystems is equal to ecological systems. Did you know ecologists do not only study how ecological systems function, they also study what happens when ecological systems do not function normally. What do you think is or are the causes of changes in ecosystems? Ladies and gentlemen, changes in ecosystems can be due to various factors. Such factors include diseases among the organisms living in the area, anomalies in climate like increases in temperature, and increased human activities. Knowing and understanding these changes can help the ecologists to prophesy about future ecological changes and enlighten other scientists, policymakers, and those who plan and implement policy-based programs and projects about the challenges facing their local ecological systems. Yes, knowing and understanding ecosystem changes can help the ecologists to prophesy about future ecological changes and enlighten other scientists, policymakers, and those who plan and implement policy-based programs and projects about the challenges facing their local ecological systems. The field of ecology involves the use of several techniques, including the use of quadrats, capture, release, and recapture technique, isotopes, and laboratory microcosms. There are various branches of the field of ecology, including population ecology, community ecology, ecosystem ecology, as well as evolutionary, physiological, aquatic, soil, forest, habitat, and behavioral ecology, among others. A population is defined as a group of living organisms of the same species living together in a given area or locality. Members of a population must compete for resources as part of their survival strategies. Such resources include space for habitat or shelter, mates, and food. The subfield of ecology called population ecology is also called ecology. It refers to the study of how and why populations change. The important population variables which are explored in the field of ecology include density and dispersion patterns. Population density refers to the number of individual living organisms in a particular area or per unit volume. Environmental and social factors affect the spacing of individuals in three dispersion patterns, namely the clumped, uniform, and random. The clumped dispersion pattern is the commonest. The ecologists use life tables to track survivorship in populations. Life tables and survivorship curves predict an individual's statistical chance of dying or surviving during each interval in its life. There are three types of survivorship curves, namely survivorship curve type 1, survivorship curve type 2, and survivorship curve type 3. The survivorship curve type 1 is characterized by few large offspring and low death until old age. For example, mammals, including human beings, especially those in rich countries. The shape of the curve is convex. The survivorship curve type 3 is characterized by many small offspring and high mortality at early stage of life. The shape of the curve is concave. Many marine fish, for example, produce millions of eggs with only few surviving to become adults. Yes, many marine fish, for example, produce millions of eggs with only very few surviving to become adults. The survivorship curve type 2 is intermediate in nature, with survivorship being constant over the lifespan and may well apply to buried seed banks of many plant populations. The shape is straight. The three types of survivorship curves reflect species diversities or differences in production and mortality. For example, the lizard, perching birds, and rodents. Some authorities indicate a survivorship curve type 4. It is determined by metamorphosis and organism survivorship by camouflage. It usually oscillates around the type 2 pattern. It is displayed by insects going through complete change from larvae, pupae to adults. There are two idealized models which the ecologists employed in predicting the various patterns of population growth. One is called exponential growth model, and the other is called logistic growth model. Exponential growth refers to the accelerating increase in population size which takes place when growth is unlimited. The equation G is equal to Rn describes the J-shaped growth curve, where G is the population growth rate and R is the organism's inherent capacity to reproduce, and N is the population size. So the formula is G equal to Rn, and the G is the population growth rate, R is the organism's inherent capacity to reproduce, and N is the population size. There are several factors which affect population growth. In addition to the number of births and deaths, population growth is also affected by immigration and emigration. Logistic growth model is the one which represents the slowing of population growth rate due to influence of limiting factors and the leveling off at the carrying capacity. Logistic growth model is the one which represents the slowing of population growth rate due to influence of limiting factors and the leveling off at the carrying capacity. Carrying capacity refers to the number of individual living organisms which the environment can support. The equation G equals Rn into bracket K minus N all over K describes a logistic growth curve, where K is the carrying capacity and the mathematical term K minus 9 all over K account for the leveling off of the curve. The multiple factors which could limit population growth may be abiotic, that is non-living, or biotic, that is living in nature. As a population density increases, some considerable factors such as limited food supply and increased disease or predation may increase the mortality rate, reduce the birth rate, or both. Such limiting factors are biotic and are density-dependent factors. Abiotic, density-dependent factors such as severe weather condition, flood, drought, volcanic eruption, tornadoes, and fire may also limit many natural populations of living organisms. Most populations are possibly regulated by a mixture of environmental factors, that is, a mixture of biotic and abiotic factors. Ladies and gentlemen, for most populations, fluctuations in number of environmental factors and population growth rates are common. For most populations, fluctuations in number of environmental factors and population growth rates are common. Some populations have boom and bust cycles which alternate population growth and decline at regular intervals. Locusts in the arid part of Africa, for example, multiply to an extent that their numbers can blacken the sky overhead, only for their population to drop rapidly afterwards. It is evolution which shares, it is evolution which shapes life histories in the biosphere on the planet Earth. Natural selection shapes a species' life history, the series of events from birth through reproduction to death. Natural selection shapes a species' life history, and that refers to the series of events from birth through reproduction to death. Natural selection refers to the process through which species of living things adapt to their environment. It can also be defined as the process through which populations of living things adapt and change. In other words, natural selection is the engine which drives the evolution of living organisms under consideration. Individuals in a population are naturally different in some ways, meaning they are naturally variable. Variation among individuals in a population suggests that certain individuals possess traits which are better suited to the environment than others. Traits which are better suited to the environment give those individuals which possess them some advantage, and such traits are called adaptive traits. Individuals with adaptive traits are the ones which are more likely to survive, thrive, and or reproduce, and thereby passing on the adaptive traits to their offspring. In due course, the advantageous traits become widespread in the population. In other words, it is through the process of natural selection that favorable traits are transmitted through generations. Ladies and gentlemen, take note also of the fact that species of living organisms also have what we call life history. A species' life history refers to the pattern of life cycle processes such as growth, development, reproduction, and death. A species' life history refers to the pattern of life cycle processes such as growth, development, reproduction, and death. We define the term life history trait as traits which relate to the timing and occurrence of each of these stages. Indeed, life history trait is also called fitness traits. They are phenotypic characters which affect fitness and include size at birth, age, or size at maturity, and the sex ratio of offspring, and age or stage-specific rate of growth, reproduction, survival, and investment in offspring. Life history traits are phenotypic characters which affect fitness, and they include size at birth, age or size at maturity, and the sex ratio of offspring, and age or stage-specific rate of growth, reproduction, survival, and investment in offspring. There are two types of life history traits associated with populations found in the various communities and ecosystems in the biosphere. These are R, selected life history traits, and K, selected life history traits. Some populations have R, selected life history traits. Such populations produce many offspring and grow fast in unpredictable environments. They are called R selection because the per capita rate of increase is maximized. They are called R selection because the per capita rate of increase is maximized. There are also populations with case-selected life history traits. These populations raise few offspring, demonstrate parental care, and maintain relatively stable populations. In general and in reality, most species fall between the two extremes of life history traits, that is, the K-selected life history trait and the R-selected life history trait. The principles of population ecology are considered to be useful since they have practical applications. Resource managers such as fishery resource managers, forestry resource managers, and others, for example, use their knowledge and understanding of the field of population ecology to determine sustainable yields. Planning and implementing integrated vector management programs for the purpose of malaria and other vector-borne disease control also apply knowledge gained through research on population ecology of the insect vectors. Human population keeps swelling, albeit the growth rate is slowing. The world's human population grew rapidly during the 20th century and stood at 8 billion as of November 2022. It is projected to increase by slightly over 1 billion people over the next 11 years, reaching 8.6 billion in 2030 and to increase to 9.8 billion in 2050 and 11.2 billion by 2100. Did you know, on the whole, there are more males in the world than females? We will revisit this statement later on. Keep following the lecture series. Ladies and gentlemen, there is something called demographic transition. What do you think it is? Demographic transition is the shift from high birth and death rate to low birth and death rate. It has lowered the rate of growth among developed nations. In the developing world, death rates have declined, but birth rates are still high. Age structure of a population is the proportion of individuals in various age groups. It affects the future growth of the population. The term population momentum refers to the continued growth which occurs in spite of declined fertility. It occurs due to girls in the 0 to 14-year group of a previously increasing population reaching their childbearing years. Age structure of a population displays socioeconomic trends. An increasing human population, for example, is characterized by an increasing need for jobs, schools, health facilities, and infrastructure. Furthermore, a large elderly population in a country demands that a considerable portion of resources should be allocated to health care delivery services. An ecological footprint measures resource use. It estimates the amount of land required by each person or nation to produce all the resources it uses and to absorb all of its wastes. Did you know the worldwide ecological footprint has already exceeded a sustainable level? Furthermore, there is a high gap between resource use in more developed and less developed nations. Ladies and gentlemen, we will end today's session here. It is time for questions. Note down your questions and ask them here or by typing them as a comment on the YouTube video. Response will be delivered shortly. Thank you very much and may God bless you. Bye-bye.